This is a loose metric that determines how much I like working with someone. If I can get what I want in as few messages as possible, I want to work with you.
Have you been frustrated by how slow issues can get resolved at work? Sometimes a discussion can take days to conclude. You may wonder what techniques we can use to reduce the turnaround time. All right, welcome, Stephen. Can you tell the audience a bit about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ken. I was a senior software engineer at Google and Snowflake, and I'm currently taking a career break. Ken was my skip manager when I was working in Google, so it's good to be working with you again, Ken. So there's this concept that I think about a lot. It goes by many names, but one of which is computational kindness. Another one is proactive communication. The idea behind this is to recognize that when you're communicating, you are imposing computational burden on your colleague. For example, when you're sending email with questions, your colleague has to think about how to answer those emails. They might even have to think of options and recommend some back to you. So the kind thing to do is to minimize the computation that you're imposing on your colleagues by doing some pre-computation on your end.
Can you go through some examples how we may be able to apply this?
Yes, for sure. Let's start with a scenario where we have a tech lead asking for information from their engineer. So let's say the tech lead would ask the engineer, hey, when will your bug fix make it to prod? The engineer would then go say, well, I just submitted it yesterday. I think it got merged. So maybe in 2 weeks. Pause.
Right.
How would you react? What do you think about this engineer's response if you were the tech lead?
If I have specific questions about the change list, I will ask about like what is in the change list. Is that something that we have agreed on? And then beyond the change list, I will ask more contextual information, like the overall progress and what's upcoming.
Yeah, that's right. I would feel the same way. So there will be follow-up questions, as you say, and as a tech lead, I also kind of want to know what exactly is in the fix. I want to be able to verify, right?
Right.
What was the scope? And then the
Yeah.
engineer kind of sounds uncertain. They're like, well, maybe we'll make it in 2 weeks and so on. So as a tech lead, it's frustrating that that you're replying to me with uncertainty and I have to ask more questions, maybe on Slack, to dig out information from you.
Yeah.
So some ideas on how this could be better is one, the engineer could anticipate and pre-compute what the tech lead wants. In this case, maybe they could provide the link to the PR and instead so that the tech lead can also verify, like, okay, this is the PR number that I have to look at when I'm responding to customers. And instead of saying maybe in 2 weeks, no, give me the exact date. Give me a link to the release calendar because somebody has to do it anyway. It might as well be you to show ownership.
Yeah, I think that's a nice preview of like how we can go about making communication more effective. Essentially providing more context instead of limited to only answering the point that was being asked. Provide some context, and if there's some ambiguity, then kind of anticipate it ahead of time and then explain like what that really means or what are the context.
Right. I like the point about ambiguity, especially if your response has ambiguity. You should ask yourself, can I reduce the ambiguity? For example, I don't want to say maybe in 2 weeks. No, I want to give them, here is the release number, which will be shipped on October 1st, let's say.
Right.
So I love that point. A related concept, if had this conversation gone better, a metric that I like to keep track of is the number of messages that we need to reach a conclusion. This is a loose metric that determines how much I like working with someone. If I can get what I want in as few messages as possible, I want to work with you. If I were your tech lead and I recognize that you give me everything I need in just one message instead of me having to dig through it in like 5 conversations, which take 5 hours, I want to work with you more. I'm going to assign you more responsibility because it's clear that you're a great owner that I want to work with.
That will help me scale better if I'm a tech lead. If
Yes.
people can talk to resolve issues in a quicker way.
Yes. I have a follow-up example. So previously, it was a tech lead we have to give information to tech lead. Now this time, what if we are the asker of information? So let's say usually it's when, let's say I'm an engineer, I encounter an exception and I want another team's help. So I posted, here's the first attempt. I posted on the Slack channel, on the team Slack channel, hey, I keep getting null pointer exception when I run this test. Can someone Zoom with me and debug this? Pause. What do you think? Am I likely to be successful if I just broadcast this on the team Slack channel?
Yeah, I think what most likely will happen is no one responds. I have seen these similar messages and emails before. I found it more effective if they can address, like when people send a message to a large group of people, one is provide enough context in the email, be specific, like what question, like why are you resolving this issue, where exactly the problem is, what you have tried, and what help you like people to provide. Second, it will be good if you know the owner or likely candidate that may be better to help you resolve this issue instead of like only describing the problem. Every day we see lots of emails. We don't know which ones we should answer. So default action is don't answer anything. So if we just see an email flying by with like unclear context and not a specific recipient, likely we will not answer it.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's all I have to say. So I'll reiterate what you said. The two pre-computations we can do is one, as you say, compute the owner in that Slack message, add someone who you think is likely to be able to help you.
Yeah.
And then second, as you say, provide enough context. So provide enough input so somebody doesn't have to dig through the context from you through 5 more Slack messages. Just attach a link to the stack trace at least, and a link to the code. So exactly, as you say. I have one final example.
Yeah.
So we talked about giving and asking for information. And now, what about when we want to align decisions? Let's say after a design doc review, you tell me, okay, there's this open question. Let's figure out the number of rows to display in a single website, in a single web page.
Yeah.
So me, as the junior engineer, then I go to Team Slack and said, and just paste, what should we use for the page size? Question mark. If I were to do that, what do you think?
Again, it's similar to your last example. I don't know if I am the right person to answer that question. I don't know exactly what this row size means, like how many rows, like which page you are even talking about. I would assume you may have started some conversation with somebody else, and this message is not really related to me, and I will probably be quiet and just wait for other people to answer it, unless you specifically ask me. And if I had a discussion with you, then I may have more context. If the discussion was conclusive, then I can maybe answer you. I would probably still try to make sure, hey, Stephen, when you ask this question, are you referring to our last conversation about this particular page and the row size? If so, then here is my answer.
Yeah, that's perfect. I will make a fix and then see if we can still do better. So, all right, I'll make the fix. From these meeting notes where I link, the page size for the XYZ page is still an open question. What should we use? And then I tag Ken and then comma, I CC other teammates who are not on the hook for the decision, but might want to jump in. But I'm putting you on the spot. So if I start that Slack thread with this improved message, is there anything else? Or what do you think?
Right. I like that much better because it's clear that I need to answer it. If I am not the main owner of that page, but rather I may be working on a few projects at the same time when I play an advisory role, I feel the question is a bit too open. I feel it will be better if you can let me know if you have thought about some options like 10 rows or 20 rows and then give me some pros and cons. We could go by 10 rows and then here's we are going to be able to display more information to the user. Or we go by 20 rows, they will see more, but they will see less information about each data row. So I prefer that you tell me some options, and then I tell you, okay, I agree with you. Also, it would be great if you have your own preference.
Yes.
You can say, I prefer the 10 rows with all these factors considered. Then it will be much more easier for me to answer this question. It looks like you did your homework. And if your proposal is reasonable, I would probably just go by your proposal. But if
Yeah.
I am strongly against this and I really feel strong about the other option, then I would probably encourage you to have a discussion or like think about the other option more carefully.
Right. I love that. Especially if the design review is for the design doc that is owned by the junior engineer.
Yeah.
It would be a red for me if the junior engineer just poses that question and throwing the mental burden to somebody else.
Right.
Yeah. Let's apply what you just said, which is two things. Provide recommendation and provide a list of options backed by data and provide your own one recommendation. So you can just say yes, good or not.
Right.
So in this case, the final message could be, hey, from these meeting notes, the page size is still an open question. At Ken, what do you think about setting it to 50? That's the recommendation.
Yeah.
And then maybe underneath, or maybe in another one pager, I would say, here are alternate options. Option 1, option 2, pros and cons. Yeah, we have discussed 3 examples: giving information, asking for information, and how to align decisions more effectively. And behind all of these, the concept is to ask yourself, how can I pre-compute so that I can be kinder to the recipient of my computation burden?
Right.
Yeah. And if you implement this, your colleagues would likely appreciate you. They're like, wow, working with this person is so easy. Everything just gets done. There are fewer
Right.
reports. We don't need to have meetings. Yeah, so something to think about.
Yeah, great summary. So we should, in the conversation, we should provide the context. We should be specific about the owner, like who should answer this question. We should provide our main recommendation and also give a list of options. Like these are the possible ways we can solve the problem and pros and cons. This reminds me, so since I've been coaching lots of engineers to prepare for interviews, in the interviews, especially for experienced engineers, when we are about to conclude a phase of the interview, let's say we are designing a system and then we are going to the next phase of the design, some engineers would ask the interviewer, what should we discuss next? But a more experienced engineer would ask the interviewer, we have concluded this portion. Here is the challenging part about this design, and we can discuss this. Or there are these 3 other options that we could also discuss these. What do you think about like where we are going next? I feel the first part, completely open question, it's difficult for the other side to answer that kind of question. And also that shows that you have not really think about what's coming. But the second one is much better, that you give some options, like you provide a recommendation and give some options. Of course, there's also a third one, which is you just say the conclusion, like, let's discuss this other thing next.
Right.
Without even pausing, you continue to talk about the next thing. So we haven't discussed this extreme in our conversation, but sometimes people may just feel strongly about the conclusion of something that they think they're asking for opinion, but instead they are just saying, here's the conclusion, just go my way. Somewhere in the middle would be the best, especially if we are collaborating with other people and we want other people to provide input.
I love that. I like how you presented that continuum of how open the question is and how much computational burden you are sharing with the other person. I do agree that for most collaboration, you probably want somewhere in between, like options, recommendation, what do you think? Yeah.
Right.
But I will also say maybe in a few cases, it might be good to have the extreme ends too. Maybe if you really want an open brainstorming session where everyone is welcome to throw anything, then you can throw an open question.
Right. Yeah. I think there are situations where these styles are more appropriate, and it's like upon us to pick the right style depending on which phase of the discussion we are in. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Stephen, for discussing with us today.
Thanks for having me, Ken. That was fun.